All right. Let me see. Yes, I'm live. Praise the Lord. And again, I'll start at 4 minutes, so you should have time to come in. So please do. When you're here, let me know the live chat, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me know when you're here. And also let me know if you can hear me clearly, please. Thank you very much. It's quite important. It's Bell is here. I'm Rashid. Isabel coming Rashad. I'm Rashid. Thank you. Okay. Glad you're here, Isabella. Chris is here also. Don't worry, don't worry. A lot of people get confused. Rashid, Rashad, but it's Rashid. Again, I'll start at 4 minutes. So, for those who are here, thank you very much. Please hit the like button also if you're here. Then you can help this live stream and this channel to reach other people also, because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. So, please hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Thank you. All right. There are more people coming in. I'm glad with that. There are more people hitting the like button, which is good. Thank you very much. All right. Mila is here. I'm glad you're here, Mila. Hold on. All right. Feline is having an issue with saving YouTube videos. Are you a YouTube? Do you have YouTube Premium, Feline? Because if you have YouTube Premium, then you can even download some videos. But if your subscription is not paid at the end of the month, they may revoke it after like 5 days. If you mean just um, putting videos in, how do I say, saving videos in playlists, you can still do that. All right. Danielle is here. I'm glad you're here, Danielle. Our fellow brother in the faith in Kansas, he's doing well now, much better. So the population there is exhausted by their own negativity, which is good. So the repercussions and prayers and decrees are working. Praise God. Almost going to begin because I started 4 minutes. Good. All right. I'll check later for you, Feline, check what goes on about this YouTube thing. But anyway, class has begun and you can all hear me clearly, which is good. All right. For all of you here, I have one question I want you to answer. Actually, I have two, but let's start with the first one. Why do you pay for your groceries? That's the first question. Why do you pay for your groceries when you go to the supermarket? I'll just wait for a minute to get your answers. Why do you pay for your groceries? I'll mute the mic for a minute and I'll check to see your answers. All right, I got some answers. I think some of you, misunderstood the question. I asked, why do you pay? Why is the payment even required? And here's the thing. I got a few answers that answer the question. It goes like this: the food over there are just physical provisions for our bodies that we need. Okay. Now the question is, food grows in the wild, and food grows organized by farmers. A farm can take some seeds, sow it all over the place, and you have a big farm with specifically one crop growing. But you can also have crops growing in the wild. Now, if a farmer grows crops on his field, then why is he doing that? So there's food, right? He's not going to be able to eat all that food by himself. No. But the thing is, the farmer has expenses for his farm. So so you pay the farmer uh, for his effort for the community. That's why you pay the farmer. Okay. So if the leaders of the community pay the farmer, why is the farmer supposed to pay taxes then? If the farmer is helping to feed his own community. But let's continue with this. So that you pay the farmer for his effort for this one thing. Or maybe it's not a farm. Maybe it's fish. Someone catch fish. Why you can't preserve fish for that long. So for the fishermen, you gave them some compensation for the effort. Or for those that grow livestock, you gave them compensation. Okay, we can understand that. But apart from giving compensation to the farmers and the fishermen, why do you pay for groceries? You pay for groceries just to get approval from the community. That's why you do it. That's the only reason you do it. Because remember, the money you use to pay is printed in some factory by the government of your country. You can't pay with gold and silver. You can only pay with what society tells you you're allowed to pay with. And where do you get that thing to pay with? By submitting to the conditions of society, maybe going to work. Or you can go in the streets selling your body, whatever. You cannot go to Chile with US dollars and pay because that's not the currency used over there. You can't go to Japan with Chinese yuan and pay. No, you need to go with Japanese yen. Because the thing is, it's only theft because there's a claim on the food. Now, food is meant as nutrition for our bodies, and we all need it. And the earth belongs to the Heavenly Father. So why are we on the earth paying for a base necessity for our bodies? Who instructed us that we have to pay for base necessities for our bodies? We are all natives to the earth. Each one of you is descendant of Adam. Okay? So we're all earthlings, we're all native to the earth. Do you ever see animals paying for food? Now, animals, due to the fall of mankind, the fall of mankind also affected animals. So animals tend to hunt. But animals only hunt on other animals when they're hungry. Apart from that, they don't do it. Or when animals don't hunt, just go into the wild to get some vegetables or some fruit or whatever. You never witness animals having a system of payment for the basic necessities. They don't. Even when it comes to mating and procreating, they don't do that. So why are human beings expecting one another to pay to be alive? And we all need the same oxygen in the air. What is that? It is because human beings have this deep rooted um, deficit that can all be fulfilled by doing the will of the Heavenly Father. When we're doing the will of the Heavenly Father, that's where our individual and collective psychological needs are met. when we are not serving the Heavenly Father, there's this enormous deficit inside of us that will turn into a deep rooted sadness. And the way we compensate for this deep rooted sadness is by sabotaging others into acknowledging us. So we want to be acknowledged at someone else's expense. That's how we feel valuable. So that's why this thing called money exists. That's why this thing called money exists. Before money existed, they used gold and silver and other precious metals. Or the thing is, currency is not a bad thing in itself. If you have a lot of fish and I have a lot of flour, I'm sorry, but you can't. I can't pay you with fish because fish will rot at some point. But if there's coins, a coin you can exchange for anything else. You can't go with fish everywhere and exchange it because not everyone can take fish. But coins is something everyone can use. So currency in itself, whether it's US dollars or euros or whatever, is not evil in itself. But it's concept of money that when you have currency, you have a right to dominate. That's something that is birthed out of the fallen mind of mankind. People think you pay your groceries in a supermarket because that's just the way it is. Because if you don't pay, you're a thief. Okay, but for you to be a thief, there must be a claim over what's there. I mean, if all human beings have this basic need for food, why is it that some human beings have a right to control the food supply and now expect you to pay to get food? And they are just as vulnerable as we all are. What is that? And why do we put up with this? So let me get this straight. We're all native to the earth, all of us. All of our bodies need food because without food, our bodies will fall apart. We know that. But now you have a few human beings on the earth where the citizens of evil spirits dominate the rest of the human species, saying, if you don't do what we want, you don't get food and something bad happens to you. And for you to get food, you need to bend over and exhaust yourself to impress us. If you don't want to do that and you take food anyway without considering our demands, you are a thief and we kidnap you and put you in this thing called prison, or we torture and kill you. That's what happens. So the thing is, society tells you this: you bend over and allow us to dominate you so that we all get relief from our inner unrest, or we act out this unrest on you. And here's the thing: all of us have mortal bodies. We were born with nothing, we were born naked, and we will depart naked. None of us own anything on the earth. So, why are a few human beings thinking they're entitled to withhold basic human supplies from you, and now you need to pay them this fiction called money in order to in order to stay alive? I'm sorry, but it's theft. This is stealing from the public. It's stealing from your human health, and it's stealing from the Heavenly Father because you claim that you are God. Well, you're not. But this is what worldlings submit unto. And now you have the police that's institutionalized to make sure we get along with this theft. But we don't see it as theft. We see it as the system. We see it as that's the establishment. But what has been established? Theft. And the public gets along with being robbed from their basic human necessities that they're entitled to as natives of the earth. And now they agree that they need to work hard to earn to be alive. This is quite odd. So here's what it comes down to: worldlings are neglectful, but they do not want to admit that they are neglectful. So that's why, from time to time, worldlings will award you prizes to shut you up so you won't notice their neglect. Well, let me say it like this: worldlings want to hide their neglect and their instability. They do this in two ways: either by by victimizing and killing defenseless victims, or by crowning one of their victims. So you have two jokers. The one is a sad joker. That's the victim that they victimize actually kill off. And then they have the other joker. That's the one they victimize, and then they pamper the victim with gifts. And those are the celebrities. So a celebrity is a victim of the community who's not allowed to be fully human. They're supposed to be this magical um, deity to convince the crowd. You see, if you just work hard, you're going to be just like Donald Trump. Or if you have talent, you're going to be just like Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson, whatever. Now, I'm not saying that those celebrities don't have talent or gifts. Now, a lot of them don't because it's just do demonic rituals, but a lot of them do. But that's not whether they have talent or gifts or not. It's not relevant. The celebrity is a victim who's not allowed to have a natural human experience. They're put under pressure to always be pleasant and exciting to the masses. And the masses don't even care about those celebrities. The masses just want to be pampered and relieved. So celebrities are the happy jokers. Just like in any card game, you have two jokers. Because one joker is in color, the other one is black and white. Black and white referring to duality. Now, let's go to another question. And this one is a bit sensitive, but I need to ask you because it's related to this topic. Why do you pay a prostitute? Another question. Why do you pay a prostitute? Mhm. Again, too many of you look at the surface of the question. I'm also about the real reason why you pay a prostitute. And it's also a lesson for you. Don't just look at the surface situation and think, oh, this must be it. Look at the root reason. Why is it really happening? Well, this actually something happens in a movie with, I believe, Al Pacino in it. Was some mafia movie. You pay a prostitute to leave. You pay a prostitute to leave. That's why you pay a prostitute. Just think about it. That human being is someone's daughter, or if it's a male prostitute, someone's son. They come from a community. They are not just a sex object, but you just want to get sexual relief from them. And there's no way you can get away using another human being as as a sex toy and not have any repercussions on you. That attitude of using another human being as a sex toy, you can't justify it. So after you finish using that other human being as a sex toy, you give them some payment to say, hey, I gave you tribute, I'm out. So you can't complain, you got nothing in return. That's why you pay a prostitute. That's the real reason they do it. So I asked two questions. Why do we pay for food for our groceries at the supermarket? Then I asked the question, why do we pay a prostitute? Some say, Rashid, those questions are not related. They're absolutely related. Because in both cases, you do something as a ritual. It's a ritual to uh, to remain in a good social standing in the community. Just think about it. If a group of people would just go to some storehouse and take a lot of food supplies, and they would say, hold on a minute, our ancestors fought to deliver this country from colonialism, all of that. So we are the descendants, we are stakeholders over here. If people do that, they'll be at odds with the police, at odds with the courthouse, and people look down and saying, "You guys are thieves. Why can't you work and earn a living, all of that?" So people submit to the ritual of just paying for something they should be getting naturally for free. Or if they do pay for it, it must be just tribute to make the community function. And the other case with prostitution, people pay the prostitutes that um, people don't look down on them for just taking advantage of someone like that shamelessly. Because what if you don't pay a prostitute? Then it would be sexual slavery. But if it's sexual slavery, that means now you need to look after the prostitute you're sleeping with. So that's why you pay the prostitute, and then the prostitutes go back to her or his pimp, and you don't have to feel bad about taking advantage of them. So when you think about these things, there's one thing in common here. The public is hiding something. They're hiding their own instability, and they're hiding their own neglect. Neglect towards themselves as individuals and neglect towards their communities. Poverty is the result of public neglect. That's it. Poverty is a manifestation of public neglect. People want others to be worse off so they can compensate their lack of self-worth on the inside. So if your family is treating you like shit, they're not valuing you, but then you see a homeless guy on the street begging for food, you feel relief on the inside. Man, at least I have a roof above my head, I have a job, and I have family that says hi to me. Even though your family is it doesn't even look after you, you still feel better off that you're not homeless on the streets. If there were no homeless people on the street, if there were no poor people around you, you would have to face how neglected you are. That's going to lead to conflict. So fallen mankind does not want to end poverty because poverty is their relief mechanism, so they don't have to face how unstable and how neglectful they are towards one another. So that is why fallen mankind always has those rituals to hide things. You paying for food at a supermarket isn't just you following what the law says. Why is that law there? That law is there to hide the ridiculous situation in which human beings are paying to be alive. Because when you really think about it and question it, you cannot justify human beings paying to be alive. We get along with it because we don't want to be arrested by the police. We get along with it because we don't want to lose the esteem from other people. So, because we want to get along with other people and because we don't want the police to be on our behind, we just get along with it by submitting to go to work and get paid and pay for groceries, even though we're all native to the earth and now we need to pay to other human beings who are just as native as ours just to be alive. That's why you have prisons on the earth. Human beings build prisons to hide their failures. Whenever a child is mismanaged and they become horrible as an adult, that is a failure of the community. But we don't want to live with our failures. It's going to be too painful and embarrassing for us. So we want to get rid of our failures. And that's why you have this thing called prison where you throw them in. So nobody has to be confronted anymore. Or alternatively, we scapegoat them and murder them. And we call it death penalty. Because when prisoners released from prison, they have to go back to the same community that put them in prison. Now, even if the prisoner was guilty, it doesn't matter. The fact alone, we have this thing called prison because we don't want to face the fact that we failed as a community. That's already a red flag. Prisons should only exist for extreme reprobate cases. But if you're a homeless guy and you stole some bread, so-called stole some bread from some supermarket, you shouldn't have to go to jail or prison. The fact you were homeless and you were trying to get out of your situation and nobody helped you is a failure of the community. So when you then get the bread out of the supermarket, you expose the ridiculous situations. Then they want you out. This is how it goes. For example, in the United States, prostitution in most places is illegal. If they catch you offering money to any woman to have sex, the police comes and arrests you. But here's the thing: if the woman is willing to take your money and let you use her body, according to liberals, that's just a fair exchange. Then why then is prostitution forbidden in in almost most places on the earth? Let me tell you why. Because prostitution reveals sexual instability, and fallen mankind does want to face their own instability, especially of sexual instability. The fact is, many of the customers of prostitutes are married men. If most of the customers of prostitutes were horny loners, would have been different. Then everyone could look down and say, "Oh man, those loners can't get a wife. That's why they need to go to prostitutes or to get their sexual drives satisfied." But the fact is that customers, many of the persistent customers of red light districts and brothels are married men. That shows you that there's sexual dysfunction on a mass scale in the human species. So people don't want this to come out. That's why if you go to a prostitute in the open, they put you in prison. Why? Because they are hiding the collective embarrassment. And you enacted the collective embarrassment. That's why they turn on you. It's not because they value women so much, because if they did value women so much, they would have done something about the sexual instability. So, now another question. When Jesus died at Calvary and he was buried, why did they roll a stone in front of the grave? That's another question to you. Why did they roll a stone in front of Jesus' grave? And that's the same reason why they bury any dead body. But still, I want you to answer the question: why they roll a stone in front of Jesus' grave? Let me know. Hmm. Just one half a minute more. Yes, Dr. Feline. That's the thing. When when a human passes away, the body becomes a corpse, and the corpse falls apart. It's going to stink and rot and all of that, and that's going to attract animals that feed off of it. It's going to attract a lot of bacteria that can cause diseases also. So when a body is expired, you need to get rid of it. You either cremate the body into ashes, or you throw it into the sea or the river, or you bury it. But in this case, I want us to go further with it. If Jesus died of some accident, it would have been a different situation. We still would have buried him, but it would have been different. But the thing is, think about it. How did Jesus die? They molested and unloaded physical violence on him, and they put him naked, bleeding to death on that cross for the public to see. And at that time in Jerusalem, it was a world event going on with hundreds of thousands of people visiting that place to celebrate the Passover. This was a world event on a hill called Calvary or Golgotha. That's how it is in official language. And Golgotha was a well-known place where they used to do pagan blood sacrifices. So that pagan blood sacrifice place was a well-known place in ancient times. And so when Christ was crucified there on that hill, it was for everyone to see. You don't crucify someone in private. You do it in public to have a sexual traumatic effect on the public. Crucifixion is a pornographic ritual to put sexual trauma on the masses because in ancient times the Romans used sexual trauma to control the masses. But here's the thing, this man they've crucified was innocent and he was contributing to the healing and well being of the community. So, him doing that to this man was a big scandal. So they buried him and put a tombstone in front of it, and they even put soldiers there to guard it. Because in that time, it happened that sometimes people stole corpses just to do cannibalistic rituals with it. So not only did they m- violated and murdered an innocent man that formed no threat to anyone else, if they would allow people to steal the body, also it would be looked worse on society. So they put a tombstone in front of Jesus' grave. It wasn't just because of the smell and the rotting corpse. It was to hide. It was to hide the crimes of the crowd. The masses failed in recognizing the value of Christ. They did. Remember, they said free Barabbas. Barabbas was a revolutionary who took advantage of his own people. Oh, and look at this. When when Pilate asked, do you want me to release Barabbas or the one you call your king? And they said, we have no king but Caesar. Now, hold on a minute. The same Judean public who wanted to get free from Roman rule, who hated this Greek culture that was infested with pedophilia, those same Judean public was now saying about this sodomite, pedophilic Roman emperor that he was their king. And here's the thing, the Romans had an emperor. They didn't like the idea of kingship, but they knew they couldn't do without kingship. They had an emperor, a man presiding over many kingdoms. And the Judeans had their king, King Herod, in Jerusalem. So them saying we have no king but Caesar, I'm sorry, but that was not even proper politically. But them saying we have no king but Caesar means that they vowed allegiance to Caesar. The same Caesar that enforces culture of pedophilia, institutions of pedophilia from the Greeks on them. The same Caesar was extorting them with taxes and all of that. So, so what I'm putting out here is that those same people eventually said, you know what? Even though we can't stand the Romans and what they're doing to our people, extorting us, enforce this pedophilic culture on us, all of that, but you know what? We'll rather put up with this pedophilic culture enforced by Rome. We'd rather put up with this extortion by Roman soldiers than to have to recognize that we are neglectful towards one another. And this Jesus here reveals how neglectful we are by him, by being a good example, so we want to get rid of him. We prefer to put up with Barabbas who was exploiting his own people. We prefer Barabbas as traitor than Jesus the real deal. So they were now hiding their own self-contradiction. Oh, and look at this. Now look at this. When Jesus resurrected, the tombstone was removed, and Jesus came out alive and well. What did this do? They couldn't hide anymore. Jesus walked around in Judea, and a lot of people saw him. Hey, and that's what I want to go to. The resurrection of Christ is something that upsets people till this day. Not because he reversed death. Understand he's God himself in human form, he can do that. We can't do that for ourselves because we're not, or we don't have that ability. We can't even resurrect other people either. But God himself in human form, of course he can reverse if they kill his human body. Okay, is everyone clear about what I just explained? Because a lot of people paying attention to what Maria was saying. Do you understand now why the resurrection of Christ bothers so many people? Because think about it. If they if they victim and man they molested Jesus, they beat him up so much that he couldn't even carry the cross to on the hill. And then Christ died, bleeding naked over there for everyone to see. They wanted to hide their crime, but now the same victim they release all their negativity upon is now walking around. If Christ remained dead, they could just brush it off and just continue like nothing ever happens. But now they are haunted by what they did because the victim is alive and well, staring them in the face. Okay, let's take another example. Let's say you have a little girl, okay, and as a little girl, she was sexually molested by this grown man, and she told her mom and grandmom that some man was touching her between her legs, all of that, and the grandma and mom said, "Shut up, we don't want to hear it." This little girl is traumatized. She's mentally messed up since childhood. In her teenage years, she developed those weird sexual appetites. And she ends up putting a lot of tattoos on her body, going to nightclubs all the time, and having sex with multiple men on one night. She becomes a wild sex object out there for a lot of men. Now, question to you: nobody intervened when this little girl was complaining about being touched by this weird grown man. Nobody wanted to hear it. So the public enabled the sexual violence to happen to her. The public was in on the child molestation that happened to her. This child molestation is a trauma she never processed because of that she became dysfunctional, and now as adult she's sexually defective. Whose fault is it that she became sexually defective? Okay? Whose fault is it she became sexually defective? Let me know in the live chat. Yes. But now she's a grown woman, messed up, sleeping around here and there with all those tattoos on her. She's also drinking a lot. She's doing drugs. The community should have intervened. The adults back then should have intervened and gave her therapy. Even when she was in a teenager, becoming a bit sexually off, they should have addressed it and look, how come this teenage girl is so sexually off? Let's look for help for her. Nobody intervened. It's not just the perpetrator and the parents, the whole community is responsible for what they allowed to happen amongst them. But hey, nobody wants to be bothered. Everyone wants to be left alone. But now that their victim, it's not just the sex predator and the parents are to blame. The whole community should have dealt with it. But now their victim is alive and in a horrible condition. She is affecting the community. When people see this woman with covered with tattoos, drinking all the time, smoking all the time, going around in a sexually wild way, people going to ask, whose daughter is this? Where's she coming from? And then if people find out she's from that neighborhood, with all those hardworking people. And people are going to think, how come this woman that comes from this background ended up this way? It's going to make the whole community look bad. So now the community is turning on her. Now they wish she would die of some accident, or they wish that she would be arrested, put in prison. Now they wish harm on her. They want her to leave. They want her dead now. Why? Because it's reflecting back how neglectful they are as a community. And let's say now that your father used to be one of the men that had sex with her just to take advantage of her. Now you need to look at your own father and think, Dad, what the heck? I thought you were an honorable man with principles. And you were taking advantage of uh, a woman who didn't even process sexual molestation as a child? Dad, you mean to tell me that you and your buddies were gangbanging this woman just to get a high, knowing full well this woman was traumatized and then post trauma, so she was taken advantage as a child, and now as an adult, you guys further took advantage of her? Now you're going to look very different at your father. You're going to think, what type of monster is my dad? So the thing is, the victim now becomes a phantom that haunts the community. So two things can happen. Either they're going to hide the past that shows how they neglect her, and they're going to scapegoat her and blame her for all those ills of the community, or they're going to try to get rid of her in a violent way. Okay, but let's say now that this woman one day finds Jesus, and she submits to Christ, and she repents from whoring around and all of that, and she faces her childhood trauma, and she forgives her parents, the perpetrator, and the community, and she's delivered. She even gets married, and she has a few children. She's a happy housewife now. She's redeemed. The moment she breaks through, all the negative investments of all the other people against her who blamed her will backfire on them. And now suddenly you will see that suddenly you can hear good news that this woman who used to be all over the streets opening her legs is now happily, she just gave birth to her first child, and you see family picture of her husband, and the baby. But then suddenly you hear that 5 people that she went to school with died in horrible accidents. Then you hear that many people in her family catch cancer, whatever. You're going to see a lot of tragedies, I mean, and sudden misfortune happening to a lot of people from her background. Why? Because before this, everyone transferred their negative tensions onto her. She was wounded as a child. They did not help her out. That was on them. She became defective, and now they want to blame the victim for becoming defective. What else could happen to the victim? Now, the victim now had no idea how defective she was. So they used the victim now to put all the negative focus on the victim. But now, if the victim died, they could have just brushed it off, say, oh, it was so sad. They could move on in the cycles. But now that the victim is redeemed, all the negative focus on her backfires, and now all the negativity haunts those other people. Well, this woman, this former, this former whore now, who's now a housewife and a mother, is the resurrection power of Christ that worked out in her life. Christ's resurrection gave a shock in the earth that she benefits from till this day. The same as with Christ, when he reversed the murder they did to him, they couldn't handle it because the victim was now the judge that stared him in the face. The victim now who was the victim now was rectified. The victim now was vindicated. Their violence has been rectified, and and Jesus became the proof of the rectification that happened. So the gospel upsets a lot of people because it tells them that they cannot hide and escape, that they have to face their instability and neglect at some point. They have to. Oh, and by the way, when Jesus comes back, all those that crucified him will be resurrected too by him. Those same Roman soldiers will laugh at him and mocked him while he was carrying that cross. And all those people that said crucify him, they're all going to see him in full power as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So understand this. The resurrection of Christ caused so much trouble in ancient times that eventually it led to the falling apart of the ancient world. It's then that this thing we call the Middle Ages began. The ancient world fell apart because the sacrificial violence that mankind was accustomed to was shut down by Christ. Christ's resurrection, this is what happened. And this also mentioned by the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul said in the New Testament that the shape of this world is disappearing, is fading away. What does Paul talk about? He wasn't talking about the earth because the earth is still standing until this day. And the earth will stand for all eternity. The earth will be renewed when Christ comes back and it will stand for eternity. What Paul was saying is that the world system that's based on blood sacrifice is fading away. Why? Because of the resurrection of Christ. Now, this fading away did not happen within a few seconds. It's now playing out throughout human history till the day Jesus comes back. It's also playing out till this day. You get me? So the end times is the last phase before this blood sacrifice establishment is fully faded away. So every generation that passes by, the effects of blood sacrifice diminish. For example, um, in the in ancient times, for example, if it has happened in Rome, let's say a woman gave birth to a baby, but then she realized, oh dear, I need to change diapers often. Oh, the baby's crying a lot. Oh dear, I can't handle this. Oh, well, hold on a minute. So this baby is going to be a grown, grown man soon. Well, duh. Of course, that baby boy you gave birth is going to become a grown man soon. Oh wait, as a grown man, it's going to see how unstable I am. His mom. Oh, you know what? I don't want this. If a woman suddenly say, I don't want to be responsible for the child's life, she and her husband could just bring the child to some specific square in Rome, leave it there, and the child will die. Nobody will pick the child up. Everyone knows when parents bring their child over because they want to get rid of it. Or sometimes when when fathers they don't want to thought you know what being a father is too much responsibility, just want to be free at party, do all of that, they would pressure the woman to hand over their newborn baby to some cult over there in Rome, and the priest would take the babies and would drown them into the Tiber River. This is something used to happen in ancient Egypt that the Romans copied. Now, in ancient times, this was considered something good because remember, if the parents don't want to be responsible, but the community tells them, "Listen, you are the parents. We support you, but you do your part." That child will grow up in environments where the parents will blame him for how their lives are. And then the child's going to realize, hold on a minute, why is the community in on this? Why didn't the community take me away from my parents and hand me over to adoptive parents who are willing to raise me? So then that child's going to grow up seeing how unstable and neglectful the community is. And because the people don't want this to happen, they think, you know what, it's better that the child is killed now. But we don't going to say it's murder. We're going to say it's a sacrifice to the gods. We're going to say that the demons are so angry that we need to appease the demons. We're going to put the blame for this on the evil spirits that we call our gods, so that we don't have to take responsibility for neglecting this life that was born over here. That's what happened. Or let's say now that uh, your let's say now that your parents were out of line and you called them out on it and they slap you to the ground. They would say, well, uh, they gave you food when you were a baby. Because of them, you actually survived childhood, so they have a right to lay hands on you. You just have to give them respect no matter what. This is how it used to be in ancient times. In ancient times, when the public neglected you or they went too far with you, they would say, well, the reason is that the gods don't favor you, so the gods don't like you, and because of that, the gods put you in this bad position in which we abuse you. We abuse you and we neglect you because the gods put you in this position. So if you want to be angry at Zeus or at Apollo or at any of those other demons. The public was using evil spirits to divert away from their own neglect. So the evil spirits were only relevant as a deflection from their own neglect. So Satan was never that powerful. You hear me? Hey, listen to me. Satan was never powerful on the earth. Ever. Demons were never powerful on the earth. Demons only had a leverage because mankind was neglectful towards one another. That's why. And mankind wanted an escape from facing their own neglect. And that's where evil spirits came in and offered themselves as an escape. You get me? Evil spirits offered themselves as an escape. And that's how evil spirits became so relevant on the earth. So those fallen angels, including the Nephilim they brought forth, were nothing relevant. They're still not relevant. But fallen mankind made them relevant so that they can continue to escape and chase relief without being held accountable. So that's why in those fairy tales, and that's why also in those horror stories, they portray demons as those those gods that are so angry to watch out for. Now, demons are unstable indeed towards one another. Demons are dangerous indeed towards one another. The paranormal is one big uh, insane asylum of masses of evil spirits fighting each other with weapons. That's how unstable the paranormal is. But when it comes to the human beings on the earth, no evil spirit should have any grip on any human being. But this thing, evil went so far that evil spirits were able to take advantage of children because of the neglect of the people. Now, there are human beings that are so wounded by the community that they end up demon possessed, and it's not their fault. Those people need help. That's true. But the only reason those individual human beings end up that way is because of neglect of the community. So when Jesus went around casting out evil spirits, he was freeing the victims of the community. The perpetrators, he didn't even address them. He ignored them. Worse, the perpetrators tried to hinder Jesus from casting out evil spirits. So now, if you have a man going around screaming in the streets and being suicidal, you say, oh, there's an evil spirit haunting him. Oh dear, what do we do? Yes, he has an evil spirit that haunts him. But how did the evil spirit got into him? He's not a devil worshiper. He's not a warlock. He's not into the occult. How come this evil spirit is haunting him and he lost his mind? He lost his mind because you guys neglected him. And now that evil spirit can take advantage of the one you neglected. But now you all say, oh, he's demon possessed. Yes, he's demon possessed. But not because he's an evil guy, not because he's a bad guy. He's demon possessed because you guys neglect him so much that demons can now use him as a vehicle to keep trauma around. Yes, the demons are to blame for what the demons are doing. Absolutely. Satan is to blame and demons are to blame. But Satan can only act out his stupidity when you, the human beings, get along with Satan's bullshit. Remember, when Christ crossed the lake with the disciples, there were two demon possessed men. The human beings felt positivity come from Christ and they ran to Christ and they fell down and asked for help. But then the demons inside the people asked Jesus, we know who you are. We know who you are. Did you come to Put us in a lake of fire before the time has come, whatever. The demons were kind of, they didn't dare to fight Christ, but they were scared. And Jesus commanded demons to leave. He told the demons, what's your name? Jesus forced the demons to reveal themselves, and they said, we're legion. Then Jesus told them to get out. And the demons begged them, please, let us go into the swine. Jesus said, okay, go. The demons even put out a fight with Christ. But look what happened. The demons went to a herd of swine, because swine were used as container for demons. When the public had negativity, one way for them to deal with this was by having a lot of swine around, and they would lay hands on the swine and they would transfer their issues onto the swine, their negative tension, and the demons would inhabit the swine. Because when human beings remain in negativity, they attract demons, and demons begin to walk around. So it's the human beings that energize demons. Evil spirits cannot do anything on the earth but human beings consenting to it. So when human beings remain neglectful, evil spirits are energized. But the public does want to deal with evil spirits because they're horrible company. So they want now we would put it on the swine. So the evil spirits went into the swine, which were the security mechanism installed by the society. And when the swine drowned, everyone in that state in that contract came to look what happened. And then they saw those two men, their two victims in their right mind. They were terrified. And when they saw Jesus, they begged him to leave them alone. So here's the thing. When Jesus cast out those demons should have gone back to the public, and the public should have lost their mind and committed mass suicide. But Jesus was merciful by allowing the demons to drown the swine instead of drawing the people into misfortune. Instead of submitting to the Lord and admitting they're wrong and dedicating themselves to become better human beings, they were they were playing the victim. I said Christ victimized them. What did Jesus do? He walked away. He made clear, I'm not going into this pity part of yours. No, 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 I'm gone from here. He shook the dust off his feet. Neglect and not looking after your own people. That's fallen mankind. Fallen mankind has this narcissistic attitude that only when things relate to me, only then it matters. If something doesn't relate to me or and I don't get something out of it, then it doesn't matter. Just because someone is an adult doesn't mean you don't owe them anything. Fallen mankind is neglectful, and Christ revealed this openly. Fallen mankind deploys demons to cover up their neglect. So I'm not saying evil spirits are not to blame, they are to blame. But evil spirits are losers. They're not even worthy to mention, even. Because it's the human beings that refuse to submit to their Father, they're the ones energizing the demons. Let me tell you one thing. When Jesus comes back and all of the human species is resurrected, all the dead human beings are resurrected, and those alive are changed to be immortal too. When all the human species is resurrected when Christ comes back, and all those fallen angels are arrested, those fallen angels are going to confess to you, believers, saying, Feline, those people that turned on you, we only helped them out because they already made up their mind against you. It was them that insisted in not liking you, Feline. Yes, we helped them out, we're guilty, but we were going, but, and they even did witchcraft on you, Feline. Look, Feline, they employed us knowing full well we were evil spirits. That's how far they went. They wanted all the blame to be on us, but they're the ones that energize us. Evil spirits are going to confess to you what actually was going on during your lifetime on the earth, the your first life you had. Truth being told, fallen mankind hides behind Satan. That's why they endorse Satan. Satan is their great enabler. Satan is their excuse to be neglectful. That's what it comes down to. So, cultures that went through a Christian Reformation, they are haunted by the resurrection of Christ more than cultures from, for example, East Asia. For example, in China, violating your children or beating your wife and all of that is in general, I don't think it's endorsed by the public, but it is kind of tolerated, saying, well, your wife should be respectful, or they're beating children, well, the children are better off, whatever. They're not that haunted as people from, example, the Netherlands or from the United States. Cultures that had a Christian who were transformed by the gospel, especially West, they're haunted more by their neglect than nations who don't have that. The reason why we don't have public child sacrifice today, where they rape and kill children openly during parties, is because of the resurrection power of Christ. The gospel affected human communities. So the blood sacrifice establishment of fallen mankind is fading away due to the resurrection of Christ. And that's the process we're in also. Let me tell you, in ancient times, also till the colonial era, there were still places on the earth where they did cannibalistic sacrifices. There were believers there, but the gospel didn't actually transform that culture yet. When the gospel came and transformed the public, they couldn't do that anymore. Because here's the thing, blood sacrifice, so neglecting your own human beings unto death in a ritual way, it brings forth this strong bond between people. In ancient times, it worked perfectly fine. But today, when you do that, it will only have a short term effect. For example, 9/11 had a short term effect of maybe 4 or 5 years on the American public, but it didn't solidify the American public for 20 years or 30 years. Blood sacrifices normally solidify uh, strong trauma bonds in a population. But due to the resurrection of Christ, those things are becoming less and less effective. And this was going to lead to, at some point, human beings on the earth cannot use blood sacrifice anymore to relieve themselves from their negative tensions. So either they submit unto Christ or they end up exterminating one another. And that's the end time. That's the apocalypse. Because in the end times is the last phase of human history before Christ comes back, when the human beings on the earth will refuse to submit to the gospel. And because that, they end up uh, exterminating one another because they have no blood sacrifice to relieve themselves anymore. Those zombie movies are symbolic for what's about to happen very soon. And the Purge movies, in which people just went loose like that, that's a symbol. Oh, that's symbolic of what's about to come. So the resurrection of Christ, it either heals you and feeds you for all eternity, or it's going to haunt you in a miserable way because you insist on fighting it and your own resistance breaks you down. And that happens with the reprobate. Now, there were reprobates before Christ's resurrection. We know that. But they were haunted by other things. But the reprobates after the cross, they're haunted by the resurrection that happened. So, understand the following: society wants to hide its instability and its neglect. That's all that's about. They either hide it by elevating a victim into a celebrity state, or they hide it by uh, setting up the victim to die. It's one of the two. What society cannot handle is when the victim survives and is kept alive by the resurrection power of Christ. That's one thing they cannot deal with. That's something that's going to haunt them. Something that's going to keep them awake at night. That's something that's going to tear apart their families, their marriages, their businesses. So now you understand why the gospel is so hated in the world. Because because the gospel not only does it tell mankind, no, you're not entitled to neglect each other and to take it out on defenseless victims around you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit me, God Almighty, I'm going to submit myself to your blood sacrifice establishment. I'm going to allow you all to do the worst to me, and I'm going to rectify it by raise myself from the dead. And that effect of me raise myself from the dead will destroy your establishment forever, generate little by little, generation of generation. And eventually, you have no option but to do it my way through forgiveness and life in abundance. So the gospel is God proclaiming that his life and abundance and forgiveness will take over the whole earth and dominate forever, whether you want it or not. And the old way of escaping and ventilating unrest will not work anymore. That's why Christ called the rock of offense. That's why Christ is called the rock of offense. Just like it said in Matthew chapter 21, verse 44, and whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but on whoever it shall fall, it will grant him to powder. So this is what it means. If you don't submit to the gospel, you are actually harming yourself because your anger against the gospel will haunt you because the gospel cannot be defeated. And not only that, the gospel made scapegoating less effective. So you're going to be haunted now by unrest. So you fall on the rock, you're wounded. And one day, the same Christ will come back in full glory and he will crush all your negative expectations. And you're going to be haunted forever in the lake of fire, having narcissistic tantrums against Heavenly Father. That's what it means. Okay. A question is, by the way, you can ask your questions now. What as believers should we do to prevent, deal with neglect? Now, this is what we do. We cannot stop worldlings from being neglectful because, A, that's why they are worldlings. What we do is we use the resurrection power of Christ to decrease declarations and fasting and prayer to get a spiritual hold on the population. And then we use the spiritual holds to force them to comply with uh, God's plan. That's what we do. And then we take physical steps to gain economic power over the masses. That is what we do. That is what we should be doing. We're not going to beg the masses to comply. We're not going to use guns to their face to threaten them. We're not going to negotiate with them. We're going to take over whether they want it or not. Christ said, go ye into the world and make of all nations my disciples. Christ is not saying, propose them to become my disciples. And when they say no, respect the no. No means no. Christ did not say that. Christ never gave the nations the option to say no and say we don't want to. Christ said to disciples, or let's say apostles, go into the world and make of all nations my disciples. Okay, not every human being will submit unto the gospel, but it doesn't matter. We take over the nations, we take over culturally, we take over economically. That is what we ought to do. Because if we do that, then the neglect will be overruled. Now there will be retaliation, but the retaliation will then serve as a backfire, and which reprobates will end up destroying themselves. That's how simple it is. Look, human beings are to blame when they are neglectful. They are. We don't like to hear that, but we are to blame when we neglect our environment. Simple as that. If we admit that we are lacking, that we are neglectful, we are unstable, then there's hope and help for us. But when we refuse to admit this, then we will blame the one that calls us out, and we'll end up becoming vampires, victimizing others to be at ease. And that's why we have to be on the same page. It's all about Christ being glorified. All these opinions, boundaries, ethics, morals, all those worldly restrictions, you need to cast them all away and see that Christ is the center. Right now, the world needs believers because if believers are not around, blood sacrifice cannot is not that effective anymore, so they end up exterminating themselves. The only reason the human species continues is because of believers. I said it. The only reason the human species continues still these days is because of believers. If believers were taken off the earth right now, all those unbelievers in their unrest would turn on another and exterminate one another. Simple as that. So if believers are the reason why human species continues till the day Jesus Christ comes back, how come a lot of believers are so oppressed? How come so many believers are just getting along, being smacked around by Satan? Come on now. If we are the reason the human species continues, then we have to use that leverage to shape and mold the public after Christ. Simple as that. A lot of believers are taught to be polite victims because by being polite victims, we energize the demons and the world can feed off of us. Because right now, the world cannot go back to ancient blood sacrifice. It can't do it because it won't be effective. So right now, blood sacrifices only have a short duration. Blood sacrifice before in ancient times may have lasted maybe a small sacrifice may have lasted for months, a big sacrifice for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Blood sacrifice today maybe only lasts a few minutes or maybe a few weeks. So now to compensate the failure of blood sacrifice, they need to drain believers to build them out. And unfortunately, believers have been bailing them out for centuries now. And that needs to stop. And it will stop. Believers are the reason the human species continues till the day Jesus comes back. So we as believers should not be victimized on a regular basis. Come on. Too many believers are always victimized by something or someone. Instead of being the, let me say like this, it should be the evildoers and the reprobates being terrified of believers. It should be like this, at any time a believer walks in, all the evildoers step back because a believer walks in. It should be like this, at any time uh, a believer opens his mouth, people say, shut up, the believer is speaking. It should be like this, at any time people are about to hit their children, think, oh shit, if I hit my child and a believer picks up this trauma, I may be finished. We should, let me say like this, bad people should be terrified in daily life because we exist as believers. One question is, if they were successful in taking out a believer, even a saved churchgoer would subtract. Would the repercussions overtake all the enablers? Eventually, it will. It will. Look, when the gospel is introduced in a culture, things will get worse because now the public cannot relieve itself and be at ease anymore. So now the public has to deal with their instability. So the gospel will bring more trouble to our community. But the trouble it brings will free people from violence in the long run. So a lot of atheists are telling the truth that the gospel brings trouble. Indeed. but the troubles the gospel brings will benefit in the long run. So, are there any more questions about this topic? Let me know in the live chat, please. Thank you very much. Let me know. Yes. The thing is, before the resurrection of Christ, human beings could easily exclude someone, pretend like someone does not exist, and victimize someone just because they're upset. Before Christ's resurrection, people could be narcissistic and victimize you and blame you and just get along like nothing happened. He wouldn't be haunted much by it. But though the resurrection, now they are haunted by by their neglect and what they do to you. And either they repent and become better human beings, or they persist in their narcissism and they become monsters that will be deported like a fire. One of the two. Or let me say it like this: the gospel shows you that Christ owns the earth, and we are not owners at all. So there's no such thing as my life, my will, privacy. I don't owe you any explanation. Shut up. It's none of your business. That doesn't exist because the earth is the Lord's, and God rules the earth. And God tolerates fallen mankind to do their nonsense and to escalate, so He will use it as evidence, as proof against them when Christ comes back. And meanwhile, believers overtake what happens on the earth. That's God's plan. The gospel is a declaration of what's about to happen on the earth, and they either join and be part of it, or they perish while fighting it. One of the two. So there is no if with the gospel. There is no option to opt out. It's just a declaration of this what is about to happen. Feline, nothing else matters. That's not true. We as creatures, we matter, but we matter because of Christ. All right. If you think nothing else matters, means you're devaluing yourself completely, and that's actually also neglecting yourself. You do matter, but you matter in relationship to Christ, who is the center. So understand this: the world has no real solutions that were lost. They only have coping mechanisms in the here and now. That's the only thing they have. Is believers with the resurrection power, we can enact solutions on the earth. Only we can. But the world just wants to escape by using scapegoats and victims. The world wants to be vampiristic with victims. They want victims to ventilate on and to escape. Is what the world wants. We are walking in power and we bring actual real life, real solutions. But the thing is, the world doesn't want to comply with solutions because they just don't want to be responsible, just want to be left alone. Well, because they can't be left alone because God's kingdom will be everywhere. Now they're destroying themselves by being angry at us. Well, so be it. So be it. All right. I didn't get any other questions here. Let me see. Let me see here. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. It's taken a bit more than an hour. Keep on agreeing with Christ. Be at peace. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.